Hi, my name is Tracy, and September is Deaf Awareness Month. So I wanted to come on and share a little bit about my journey to becoming a deaf person, or partially deaf person, however, hard of hearing, however you want to phrase that. I fit into that category. When I was 2 years old, I went in and had a tonsil and adenoid removal, and it was in 1965 when I was 2 years old, and that was not a horribly common thing to do back then. So I was already from a very young age having ear, nose, and throat issues, and it continued some when I got a little older. Obviously, having the tonsils and adenoids out helped significantly, but I do remember, still having some issues. As a kid, I'd go to bed, I'd feel great, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I have like 105 or 106 temperature. My parents are freaking out, sticking me in a cold bathtub of water, taking me to the ER. I was getting injections of stuff. I mean, it was really bizarre, and I don't know if it was viral or, I don't remember all the details about that. I just remember the episodes, but, at that high a fever, you're kind of hallucinating or whatever. But when I was a young adult, I knew I'd been having ear issues, and I am not going to cover all of the reasons and the whys and the hows on how I got to the point that I did, where I went to an ear specialist and found out I needed surgery. That's a whole nother story. I don't want to go into it right now, but suffice to say, it had been a while. My ear was very infected, and I was kind of expecting to go in and have him say, you need a strong course of antibiotics, you need, whatever. He took one look at it and goes, you need surgery. What? Yes, I had all this infection. It was very serious, and he said, we need to get this done. We need to get you scheduled. So, okay, fine. We go, we get it scheduled. Well, before we got it scheduled or before the surgery date, I found out I was pregnant. And this was unexpected, completely unplanned, kind of a miracle, in the fact that I was using something. So it shocking, but we had to postpone the surgery. The baby was due January of 1986, and we were going to wait 6 weeks after that and then have the surgery. So I'm on antibiotics the whole course of the pregnancy, trying to keep this infection from getting any worse. And I was, going along, working full time. I already had a couple of little kids at home. And I stood up at work one day, and my vision went down, all black down to a pinpoint. Scared me half to death. Called my ENT, and he said, you need surgery now, like right now. So I had to rush, and I don't know, it was like the next day or something like that. It was really, really quick. They got me in for surgery because I was pregnant. I was 6.5 months pregnant. I don't know, something like that at that point. They had to have the surgery at the hospital where my OB team could also be present in the operating room should there be any sort of an emergency with the baby. So that's what we did, and it was a very crowded operating room. The entire OB team there, prenatal isolate things, the ENT team, they're all there. And the last thing I remember before I went under is nurse whispering in my ear, and she said, don't you worry, we're going to take care of you and your baby. And that's the last thing I remember. And then I wake up, and they had done a radical mastoidectomy on my left ear. And a radical mastoidectomy, and I'm not even going to attempt to tell you everything that's involved with that, other than they take all this stuff out, and it was a mess. And they do that by they cut behind your ear like this, fold it over on your cheek, Yeah, it's about as awful as it sounds. And they go in there and they clean all that out and do all their thing, and then they stuff a bunch of cotton, like like the long things of cotton. They stick all that in there to like pack it. Then they close your ear back over and they sew it up, and then they wrap your head so you look like you had brain surgery or something. Which I guess in a roundabout way, it was really close to the brains. I don't know. They went inside my head, so maybe that counts for something. But the recovery was a little shocking. I wasn't expecting how, the ear, it was all numb, and it was, you've got stuff in your head, and it was a pretty extensive surgery. And other than my ear, nose, and throat, the tonsils and adenoids, I never had a surgery. So that was a pretty major foray into surgery, just jump right on in there. But they told me after the surgery, my hearing in that ear would be significantly reduced enough that I would need to wear hearing aids. Now, I was young, early 20s. I'm not wearing no stinking hearing aid. That's for an old person, And they said, if you don't, it's going to tax the hearing on the good ear that you can hear out of. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I had a little bit of hearing in there. Not a lot, but I had some, and I could hear out of this ear. Well, what I ended up doing, unintentionally, I think, and I might have been doing it before that because I know that the hearing in that ear was not great with all that infection going on. I started picking up and reading lips. It just came naturally because I'm trying to hear, and I could hear sounds, but it wasn't very clear as to what they were saying. So if I could read their lips, I could match what their lips were saying to what I thought I was hearing, if that makes any sense. And I did that for years. I did, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years later, went in and, I'm like, okay, I'm noticing some issues. I can hear sounds, but I can't tell where they're coming from. It's kind of like you don't have hearing depth perception or, peripheral hearing or something like that, where you can hear it, but you can't, your echolocation's off and you can't tell where it's coming from. And I had them do a tympanoplasty, which is where they go in, again, cut it behind there, open it up, and try to rebuild the eardrum, the inner ear bones. They used like this stuff. I called it my Tupperware ear because it was like they were making it out of little plastic something. I don't know. It didn't work. And the second surgery going in like that, and he's like, well, we could try it again. I'm like, nope. You had your chance. I'm done. I'm not, I'm done. Because it's horrific. The vertigo is like nothing you've ever experienced when they're messing around in there, and then they go pull all the packing out, and they're like, I'm like, how'd you get all that in there? So it was not a pleasant experience. So fast forward another 20 years. This was in 2015. I went in, and I'm like, okay, I'm now of an age where the hearing is getting much worse. And I was noticing reading lips wasn't good enough anymore. And I was missing a whole lot of things. It was getting really, really frustrating. And I thought, okay, I'm ready at this age, and it was just pure stubbornness. I mean, it's ridiculous. I should have went in there and got the hearing aids. But, so I'm like, I'm here to get hearing aids, give me hearing aids. And they look at it and they're like, I don't think so. I'm like, great, now what? Well, they went in, they looked, and they go, you need to go to an ear surgeon because you have a type of hearing loss that we're not sure what amplification of a hearing aid you would need, and so for us to be able to know how to set it, you need to go to an audiologist or an ear surgeon or whatever and get a test and have them come back and say what type of hearing loss you have, blah, 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 so they know what to do. So I did. I went to a new ear surgeon because it had been like a million years since I had went to the other one. And he said, you can't have regular hearing aids because you have profound conductive hearing loss and you have sensorial hearing loss. So I had both conductive and nerve hearing loss. So it was mixed hearing loss in this ear, and traditional regular hearing aids that you can stick in your ear, behind your ear, would not work for me at all. So I went in, and that's when I agreed to do the Baha bone conduction hearing aid implant, and I have a Baha 5. And he tested to see whether or not this was worked by, I don't know, it's like this metal, think of it like a tuning fork. And he put this like here and then on the bone back behind my head, and he dinged it. And I was shocked at how well I could hear. You don't realize how much you can't hear until you can hear it. You know what I mean? You just don't realize. And especially if you've been like this for many, many years, it's kind of like a normal. So if it gotten to the point that I was noticing and it was starting to become a bigger problem, I knew it was bad. So thankfully my insurance covered it. I went in and I had the surgery. It was not as big of a deal as I thought drilling the hole and sticking a rod in your head was going to be. It was way less of a big deal than the mastoid surgery or the tympanoplasty. So we got that in, didn't have any issues, got the hearing aid, and I love this thing. I absolutely love it. And one of the things that I like about it is that, I'm kind of a tech geek. And this hearing aid is Bluetooth, and it will actually ring straight to my iPhone. So when I'm walking through the store, I'm legit talking to the voices in my head because my phone is ringing through and it's coming through my hearing aid. So to me, that's like the coolest thing ever. So I like it for that reason, that it's hands-free and it'll pick up things and I can talk through my phone. And there's like some other things there's like some microphone thing you could use to help with conversations at a table. They have different ones where you could stream like your TV to your hearing aid or things like that. But because I do have some hearing in my right ear and the hearing aid does make the hearing better, I can hear well enough with the TV on to not have to stream it necessarily. But the phone, definitely, I need to have that. So that's the initial gist of it. Got the Baha, doing great, but I start having ear infections again and fungal infections. I'm like, good Lord, what in the world's going on? So I finally went back to the ear surgeon, and he's like, you are not using your ear canal to hear. He said, that is serving you absolutely no purpose at all, having this open and getting infections because you're hearing through the device behind the ear and the bone. And he said, so what we're going to do is we're going to go do what they call a subtotal petrectomy, where they go in and they literally graft skin and completely seal off your ear canal. Like, it's completely closed. They like split the skin here to kind of like cover that over, and they cleaned everything out, got all the scar tissue, all the infection, all that stuff out, and sealed it completely up so no infections could get back up in there. Great, this is going to be fantastic. And they said, you need to come back in a couple of years to have us do another MRI to make sure no cell growths. We got everything out of there, and there's nothing trying to grow back. I'm like, cool. Well, a couple months before, 2-3 months before that 2-year anniversary, and this was just a few months ago, I started having pain in my ear, like significant pain and extreme vertigo. Here we go again. So I went in and I had an MRI done. I made an appointment, had an MRI done, and I have all this fluid build up in the mastoid and all of that in there. And I'm like, seriously? I've got an infection from, a closed eardrum. How does that even happen? Well, come to find out, it's coming from my sinuses over and it was draining. He said, just think of that as a sinus infection, and that's just where some of the fluid is going, and it's still infection. He said, they're the only two, we don't need to go in and drain it. The only two things that we need to do is, number one, you probably need to take like an allergy medication, like a Zyrtec or something like that to kind of help control, the nasal drip and fluid and things like that. And he said, if you develop an infection and you've got the pain and some of the dizziness and stuff, he said, you just call me and I will call in a prescription, because it's all sealed off. And my regular GP and no other doctor is going to be able to look in there and tell me if there's infection, because they can't see an eardrum. They can't see anything, literally nothing. And the only way even the ear surgeon would know is by doing an MRI to see if there's fluid. So that's kind of the plan right now to maintain the hearing, is, the infections, and to control the infections. And apparently I'm still going to get. But I'm having issues with the right ear. Now, the last audiology test that I had, this was profound, but I was losing hearing in the right ear. So I had done, I guess, the damage that they said it was going to do. It was starting to affect this ear. Now, I don't know if you can actually have some sort of a hearing loss that occurs kind of sort of naturally with age, or if it's just my overusing it, or both, or whatever. But I really had taxed this by straining, using this ear for the majority of my hearing for so long. I can hear. I can hear sounds. I can hear things. Things aren't always as clear as I think they probably are for everybody else. I can hear things, but it doesn't always filter sound really good. So like when I'm hearing something, I'm hearing all of it, all the background, all of the everything, kind of all at one time. And sometimes it's kind of hard to process that and separate that out. So I can hear, like if I'm having a conversation with somebody, I can hear their voice, but sometimes I still need to read their lips to make sure that I'm hearing and understanding everything they're saying correctly, if that makes any sense. So, without my hearing aid, I am, half deaf, maybe a little more than half, because I don't have full hearing in this ear. I hear enough that I can hear my voice and I can talk okay. It just gets a little dicey in large rooms, crowded rooms, and things like that, or there's a lot of background noise going on. I wouldn't be able to hear and separate stuff out. But other than that, I'm good. I don't really know sign language. Never had to learn sign language because I wasn't deaf as a child, and I wasn't completely deaf as an adult. I had enough hearing that I could get by. Now, at this point, I have a hearing aid and I can still hear and I can still communicate. Maybe not at 100% like somebody who doesn't have a hearing issue. But, I, kind of like, do I want to learn ASL? Who am I going to talk to? I'm not really immersed in the deaf culture, and I think if you can be, I recommend it. If you are young or you have children who are hearing impaired or hard of hearing, deaf, whatever terminology you're comfortable with, I would have them learn ASL. I really would. I think ASL would be an awesome second language that, I think it would be beneficial for schools to offer, especially in grade school, because little kids soak stuff up like crazy. But, I'm tossing it around. I don't know if I've got the memory capability to learn a language at my age and try to decipher it. But maybe because I would use it a lot more. Maybe. But anyway, reach out if you don't know anybody in the deaf community. Maybe you encounter a deaf person in your daily life, at work, or where you shop, or whatever, church, school, whatever. Maybe try to learn some ASL so you can communicate with them and let them know that you understand their communication needs. And it's very isolating being a deaf person in a hearing world where everything's catered to the hearing person. And while there's, they make accommodations, they don't do so very well. And anywhere you go, you are stuck trying to figure out how to communicate with everybody else who can hear. You can't, and nobody else knows ASL. Think about that. That's tough. That's a tough way to live, and it's not really fair. Just because you're deaf doesn't mean, you're low intelligence. It doesn't mean that at all. The two have nothing to do with one another. So I think that's kind of a misconception about people who can't hear. They just assume they're not smart, and that's, of course, hogwash. So anyway, I suggest that you reach out, find someone deaf, or if you encounter someone deaf, maybe learn a little sign language and just learn how to say, hi, my name is, and then spell out your name, and then start with that. And then just let them know you don't know ASL. They probably could read your lips. But, start there and learn more about deaf culture and even some of the struggles that deaf people go through. I mean, that's the whole point of awareness and having awareness months is for you to try to learn more about what people who have that condition, what their lives are like on a day-to-day basis. What are some of the more common things that they deal with? And see if there's ways that you can step in and help, or just to make yourself aware, just so you can have more empathy for someone else's situation. That's always great. So, thank you for listening. I hope you, just got tons of information out of my hearing story, But it's important that we share what we've been through with other people, so other people can learn, can know, can understand. Well, I will talk to you next time.